Welcome to Sugar Ink, a podcast about living the plus side of life.
Hi, I'm Sugar from Sugarcoat It.
And I'm Samara from Samara.
And you're listening to the Suger Ink Podcast. Welcome back, guys. Thanks for being here.
It's so exciting to be back again for episode number
5, I think this will be.
5 or 6? I thought we were at 6, but 5, sure.
Yeah. Welcome back for this episode. Whatever the freaking number it ends up being.
We're on the same page.
Well, and that actually might segue beautifully into what we're talking about today, because we're talking about side hustles and ways to diversify your income, whether you are in a job or working for yourself or whatever. Obviously, this podcast makes us no money, but it is one of our many side hustles, hence we can't keep our numbers straight.
Yes. And I think we've been talking about this kind of not in the podcast, but in our own conversations where we've talked about how you diversify your income between your business and a bit of a part-time gig and other things. And I have a full-time job. I do a couple of other things on the side to diversify. And that's like the thing now. That's what people are doing.
It's 100% the thing, because it came up, didn't it? Because you were talking about the mentors in your program who were like, pretty much everyone had more than one job or more than one hat that they were wearing. It's just the thing that people do.
Yeah, it was actually, that was the time that I kind of realized, oh, wow, it's not just an uncommon thing anymore. It's way more common. So this diploma course I was doing, we have these women that are mentors and they talk about what they do and how they're leaders and all that. And 11 out of the 12 had more than one job, which was amazing.
I mean, I'm not surprised, because having been around bloggers for a while, that's quite common, you know. Yeah. Most people don't earn a full-time income from their blog and all that sort of stuff. So that makes sense to me. But like you said, it just didn't feel like it was a mainstream thing that was being done. But it's definitely something that's shown up in, I've been reading Gary Vee's new book, Crushing It, and obviously Crush It, I think, was the old one. It's also like such man language, like crushing it, crush it.
Is that what Rebel Wilson says in one of the
crushed it. But so he, in his first book, was writing about how people become personalities, like brand and personal brand personalities, and how they can then diversify their offering to be able to create all these multiple income streams and really take advantage of that influencer economy. And so Crushing It is a follow-up to that, and people who read the book and went on to crush it, or are crushing it. So, I find it really interesting, because even people who you might know from that influencer space, like some of the YouTubers I watch and things like that, you had no idea how actually diverse their businesses are. I did air quote marks there, but they are businesses. Anything that generates you monies is a business to me. Yeah, and I find when I was blogging, and you obviously still are, but that was one of the main things that they talked about, was diversifying your blog income. So don't just rely on people paying for ad space, but try to create your own products and try to do this and that and find different ways. So I think it's fairly, and I'm sure that's the same for all business owners. Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel like people have brought that into their everyday life, even if they're not a business owner. So they have their full-time job and they think, well, there's maybe not much opportunity to make extra money there if they're not shift workers, if they're just a stock standard 9-to-5 person. So they do things on the side to make that extra income for holidays or living the life or whatever else might come up.
Well, that's it. It's expensive to live, to own property. We were talking about this on the blog recently, about how, when I bought my first home, or built it technically, because the homeowner grant was better if you built back in.
Much better.
I think it's a bit the same still in Queensland for first homeowners. It cost me all up like $115,000.
Oh my God.
I know, and I'm 35 years old. So that's the difference. Admittedly, I did own that when just after I was 18, before I turned 19. So we are looking at, what's that, like 17 years ago? How's my math? But yeah, it just the difference. So that sort of home, even in my town, which is, you know, quite regional and all that sort of thing, would cost more like 350,000 these days. So it's even doubled in my like buying lifetime. And I did quote marks again. Super not helpful for people listening to the podcast. But yeah, like even in the time that I've been in the market, it's basically like more than doubled. So it's important to have different streams of income, and for me especially, someone who gets bored easily, it's important for me to have other interests outside of what I'm doing, whether it's as a full-time job or, you know, part-time or a few hours here and there.
So with when did you start diversifying? Is that only since you've kind of added blogging into the repertoire of things that you do? So that, what's that, 9 years ago?
Yeah.
Or have you kind of always had that, there's always something else on the side, whether you've had the full-time job, there's always been something else that you've done?
Well, a little bit like that. Mostly because even when I was working full-time, we made sure that we kept like a property portfolio, because obviously working in real estate, that's something that people do. So we always had a second sort of investment property, which I would deem to be a bit of a side hustle sort of thing. When I had my business, Kelvin had like a paper run as well as his full-time job. Just little random things like that we've always done to I guess boost our disposable income and make sure that we can achieve what we want to achieve when we want to achieve it, sort of thing. But yeah,
a paper run, that's so cute.
Yeah, I know, but it suited him, right? Because he was used to being awake at all these random hours, and they'd go at midnight or 1 a.m. and wrap all the papers, and then by 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning he'd be home. I mean, didn't pay well, but for him it
still
was
something.
It was more than enough, like spending money and stuff like that. And he got to be a creeper out in the middle of the night around town, which is people watching is like his favorite thing to do. So you'd be surprised the life that a town can have at that time of night.
He might have all the gossip. He could write a book.
Yeah. I might make him do that, and we'll sell it on the blog. Go to sugarcoatit.com. But yeah, I think definitely when the blog came along, that's when I first really started looking at how to diversify the income from it. I was working full time, so realistically I didn't need the blog to make money. I was earning quite good money as a property manager, and but I was just like, well, I'm investing all this time. Someone should pay me. Like, yeah, I don't know. That's just always been my mindset around that sort of stuff, because I loved it and I loved doing it, but I also knew that it cost something. Like, it cost my free time, and it cost the hosting, and it cost, you know, all that, all the photography equipment and the clothes and the blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, so that's when I had my first product on the blog, probably within the first sort of 2 or 3 years. And that doesn't include the sponsored content and ads, an actual ebook product within probably that first 3 years. And then just have always had something since then.
Yeah, nice. I think I may have bought that first ebook.
I hope you did.
I'm pretty sure I bought 2 from you.
Oh, good.
And I feel like they were both fashion based. So that was your first one, and then there was one that you brought out maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah, I was doing, I was offering the newsletter subscribers used to get a smaller scale ebook focused around something. So there was one about just being a happier person, I think, and one about dealing with yourself when you're being a loser, which that title itself triggered a lot of people, so sorry about that. I'll be less negative in the future. So they were only like $4.95 or $5.95, whereas the fashion ones were about $13.95. I think the early bird offering was about $9.95. And I have an Instagram workbook now that's $24.95. But every time I update it, people get the new version for free. So I figure it's super cheap at that. So yeah,
nice.
I just brain dump everything I know about Instagram at the time, call it the next version, and send it out. But yeah,
so good.
Yeah,
and you find that they like doing that diversification of products help pay for the running costs of the blog, and then there was like a little bit extra left over for yourself.
Yeah, they definitely, an ebook, like people talk about how you set it up and it goes, and admittedly mine still, especially the Instagram workbook, based on the back of a couple of posts on the blog that do quite well with SEO, it still sells an occasional copy here and there. Every time I relaunch it, I could sell 100 copies maybe, which is, a couple of $1,000s. But the relaunches cost money as well, because there's ads and there's redoing it and there's the time and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so I think while I don't think you should just expect to write an ebook or a course or something and have it perform for you for free, like have it, I think that passive income conversation kind of got a little nuts for bloggers there for a while. Like, yeah, you're not just going to be able to write it and put it out there and it's just going to sell its ass off. You have to be ready to sell. But yeah, they generate enough income. But realistically, the blog in terms of sponsorships and ebook sales and ad sales and stuff like that, like AdSense ads, all of that sort of stuff, it's never really ever made up a large portion of my income. Even when I was making more money on social media, it was through consults or building websites for other people or helping them plan or do their social media. That definitely has, it does better than my day job now. So it's interesting. It's a lot of hats. It's a lot of hats. But but you recognize that. Like, even now that you don't blog, you've got plenty of things happening on the side of your what is a full-time job.
Yeah, I actually, one of the big reasons I let blogging go was because it was just not, it was costing more to run it than it was, than what it was making. It would make money occasionally, and I did not have the stamina that you have to put into a product. I found it really hard just to do like a weekly bloody email. So
I don't want to talk about the emails right now because mine has been rubbish for about 12 months now. And moving on. And I've always wanted to have something on the side. I don't like just having my day job. Like, I feel like I need something a little bit more productive and creative outside of that. So I really enjoyed photography, and then for my 30th birthday, all my friends and family put in for me to get some really nice photography gear, kind of stepped it up a notch from this 4-year-old, DSLR that really does sweet FA, to a really nice kind of Canon Mark III, beautiful lens. All this stuff. And the one you see on YouTubers worldwide, they're like, today I'm shooting with the Canon D Mark III with the Sigma 1.4 lens, 50mm 1.4, everyone. That's cool.
So I got this beautiful camera gear, and I was like, well, I really enjoy photography. Maybe I can make that a side hustle. And I had a few family members say that I should really give it a go, because now that I've already got the equipment, I didn't have a huge outlay other than a website, and then if I wanted to promote anything, paying for the ads. So
I've been your experience with Facebook ads, you could just crush that.
I did definitely try to, and I actually find hot tip for doing a product like photography, those buy swap sell groups are gold and they cost nothing to post in. Yeah, they do a lot better than the ads do actually in terms of getting people to sign up.
Yeah, because it's like it's endorsed. It's got a real person behind it. No, you should let me have a play with your ads though. I bet I could fill those spots. We'll do a bit of swapsies because it's funny what you can't see when you're doing it for yourself.
As yourself,
yeah. Because I looked at one point, because obviously all the focus of my blog is different. So none of the audiences I'd created, none of anything, like even the audience that's there's a large percentage of people who are just there, you know, to support me. They're not actually that interested in the content. So it's it's definitely, I'm at an interesting point at the moment where I really feel like I need to invest in that kind of thing and probably bring in a third party so that way it's like outside of me and I don't keep looking at it the way I've always looked at it. It really needs to be looked at completely different. So
I think you're right. To have someone who's not close to it, who doesn't say, well, this is what it should be doing, and someone with a more critical eye to kind of say, get over yourself and look at trying to do it this way. Because I find that for sure with the photography stuff is that I'm too close to it and I kind of think, this is a really beautiful image that I've taken. Why is that not doing well? But
why
you do
doesn't
need someone
everyone
to be like,
love this?
And you do need someone external to kind of go, okay, like it's beautiful, but people aren't loving it. So let's try something else.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. I spent so much time the other week on an ad for Leave Home blog. And because it's something that we're doing at the moment to run alongside with the fact that they're generating all this new content. And because the page had been inactive pretty much for about 18 months, it really needed the push along of an ad. I did one week and it was like so good. It performed so beautifully. Our click-throughs were super high, you know, for that level of blog and the level of spend. I think I was spending $25 and, you know, and it was generating upwards of 80 clicks a day. So, I mean,
amazing.
That's excellent. Super cheap. And then the next week the ad bombed. And I was like,
why?
I know, and I was like, but it's just as good looking. But I'd switched all the posts, and it turned out that those posts just weren't as interesting to the audience. And super interesting. Speaking of side hustles, Leave Home blog, just drop it in there. It's the next one.
Leavehomeblog.com.
Yeah, leavehome.com.au, or you can go to leavehomeblog.com. We've got them all. They'll all get you there. The only one we don't have, I think, is leavehome.com. They're trying to sell it to me for about 10 grand somewhere. And I was like, dude, I have everything else. I don't care.
Yeah.
Keep it.
You should be wanting to buy mine, not the other way around.
Yeah, that's it. I'm like, you keep it because you've just like parked it. So if they get there, they're going to be like, this isn't right. Might go to one of the any other like 50 billion options. So yeah. Side hustle.
So what does your break down, maybe we'll both break down, what does your side hustle or your whole income at the moment look like?
Yeah, I might need a minute, so do you want to start?
Yeah, sure.
I was like, hang on, let me get a pen. I'll just be like, hang on, I've got a whiteboard over here. Maybe I'll refer to it.
Yeah, maybe mine's a bit simpler because I literally just have my full-time job, so Monday to Friday, 9 till sometimes 7 or 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And then I have my photography, and then I'm a knitter, which I always feel weird saying.
Yeah, I could see that. You're like, I craft shit.
Because I feel like the people then will be like, oh, she's a knitter? Like, I feel like there's all this judgment to it, and I don't know why.
I think it's trendy at the moment, isn't it? It's a thing.
The chunky kind of knitted blankets and stuff are all kind of making a comeback.
I've seen those hand knitting things. They're like, I get obsessed with those. That's crazy.
They're quite mesmerizing to watch the videos. Yeah.
What's
sure.
the name of because the knitting one, I've seen the Instagram. Fin
Fibers.
Yeah. That's a cute name. Your photos are really good too, product photos.
I'm making a lot of effort into those, and I even bought one of those light boxes.
Yeah.
That were kind of all the rage. I'm not loving the light box. I
think it can be a bit sterile.
Yeah, I think it would be good for a different type of business, but not a handmade one. It's a bit hard for a handmade one. So that one definitely doesn't generate a lot, but it's a hobby that I have, and it's a way to kind of pay for my hobby. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which is all a side hustle really has to be in the end. Yeah, it can just be something that, I always think that they should be generating some sort of income if you're going to call them a hustle, even if the income's being reinvested in the business. Or in I like to call them businesses because that's what they are, whatever the scale. But I just think, how great is that for you to be able to do something that you love doing, instead of them just being like handed out to family and friends who might have way more mittens than they need, now other people get to enjoy them. I just think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I do get a bit of a warm and fuzzy. Like I recently had an order for like this tiny little newborn navy beanie with this pom-pom that's the size of the newborn head. So it's disproportionate, and I love it. Yeah. And I got the message from the person who bought it saying, I'm so excited for this to arrive. Yeah. So I just even get little warm fuzzies off that. And I've like added into my thing is that I write a story of what I was doing when I was making it. Yeah. So like I was binge watching Grey's Anatomy while making this little blah, 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 like try and build the story.
So cute.
Yeah, it's actually, it definitely doesn't make any like a huge amount of money, but it's a really fun kind of self-satisfying thing to do. Yeah. Whereas the photography is one that I would like to grow more. Yeah. So that it was no, I don't think it would be ever anything I would do full time because I don't think I love it that much to do it full time, or I think I would begin to hate it if I did it. Yeah. But it definitely helps pay for things like holidays. It helps pay to upgrade my camera gear, which is not just for the business, but it's for myself and my family to take photos of us. Yeah,
and then, I can get that. I'm always buying camera gear, and I think, in a lot of ways it's helped to have the blog and that to offset the costs a little bit, but I think I would be doing that anyway.
Exactly. So much fun. Yeah. So now you've had a minute. Do you have
I think I do. You brace yourself. So I do about 10 to 15 hours a week with the company that manufactures boat ramp planks. So we're skill centered. So I'm there with the guys there, and I work in quality and construction. So I keep that job going because I love the team there, and I think it's awesome. It's definitely at the point where I probably don't need that job, and I mean, they know that. That's no surprise to them. But I think it works too because the structure that job gives me definitely helps set up my week. I'm less likely to be pushing stuff off when I know that there's 3 times a week that I'm committed for blocks of time, if that makes sense. Then obviously I have the blogs. So I have Sugarcoat It and I have Leave Home blog. Leave Home is a small blog, but I think it has really big potential, and I've said that since day one. And then I always get distracted by Sugarcoat It because it's been my home for like 9 years. So when I run out of time, I try to limp Sugarcoat It along, even though I know Leave Home has some real potential. But so they're the blogs. They generate income from sponsored posts, advertising. What else? Ad sales, very like as in Google ad sales. Very limited. Obviously, on Leave Home, a sponsored post is like $150. On Sugarcoat It, it's more like $750. So I mean, that's sort of the scale, and that gives you a bit of an idea of the scale of the readership of each. What else do we have? So then from there, I have my social media like consultancy, I guess. So that includes websites, digital marketing, everything from, helping people run their Facebook pages to setting up MailChimp accounts and EDMs and stuff like that. I do a bit of photography with that, a bit of image sort of creation, all sorts of stuff, so much stuff. Workshops and workshops and one-on-one consults do quite well for me, because some people don't learn in a workshop format, I find. Like, they come to it and then they're like, actually, this doesn't work for me because I need to either see it happen or be able to specifically have the entire 2 hours of your time to discuss my specific examples. So I do that as well. What else is there? I think that's about it. Oh, my earbud fell out again. Sorry.
And are they all fairly, like, even in terms of what they bring in, that if you lost one, it would be okay? Or is there one, like, a situation where if there was one that would go, it'd be like panic stations?
Well, the consultancy definitely earns the most income at this point. However, it's so diversified within itself. It's not just workshops or not just one-on-one consults or not just social media management or EDMs, that even if I lose a client, it's not sinking the ship. Even if I lost half of my clients, it would be fine. Just because it's so diverse within itself. So that definitely helps level the field a bit in terms of income. There was a long time that obviously the thing that I did for my day job was the primary income. But a couple of years ago, I'd pretty much got to full time, and that was 100% not what I wanted. I was like, I don't want to work full time for someone else. It doesn't suit me. It doesn't suit my talents at all. Like, I definitely am built to work for myself, even though it's taken a long time to learn to kick my own ass, because God, I can be a procrastinator, and then it's like 2 a.m. and everything has to be done, but I've spent the 6 hours prior to that, doing the dishes or watching some Netflix, thinking, just pondering off in the universe.
And that's probably the other side of side hustles, is the discipline that you need to make them whatever you want them to be.
Exactly.
I feel like my fin fibers, I could definitely put more effort into that, but I don't really want to grow that because it takes so long to make anything. I don't want to be getting 50 orders a week because I wouldn't be able to do that. But then the photography I put more focus into because that's a lot easier. So I can see where the self-discipline to grow it is like probably one of the main things people need.
And the thing is, the different, like Gary Vee talks about this a fair bit as well too, that you need to be really self-aware, because it's important to know what your outcome is going to be. Like for Kelvin, a lot of people are always pushing him to scale up his business, bring in like another crew of guys and all that sort of stuff. But he has his business to support a lifestyle, And if you start scaling that too high, then it's no longer the lifestyle business that it was, if that makes sense. Yeah, sure, you might be turning over like 2 or 3 times the money, but you're dealing with 2 or 3 at least times the headaches. For everything that everyone always says about scaling it up and you can remove yourself from the business. Well, that's never been my experience. As someone who, my parents have always had businesses from, the farm to transport company to all sorts of stuff. They were always working in them. So it's kind of like you need to be self-aware enough to know that, okay, my outcome is that I want to be able to afford this, or I want to be able to take 3 months off a year. I want to be able to do this or that. And that, I think, is the freedom that a side hustle can offer.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like for me, I would love to build it up so that when we do decide to have kids and when that happens, we have something I have something that's still creating some kind of an income like photography, but it is on my terms. It's on my time when I do it. It's not work where you have to negotiate part-time or flexibility and all those things.
Yeah.
I can just take a solid 12 or 18 months or whatever and still have the fallback of photography or even fin fibers to bring something in. So there's kind of, I suppose, less guilt for having that time off, but it takes off that financial pressure of being without an income for extended period of time.
I think for women especially, the side hustle is super empowering in that, you know, you're setting your own terms and you get to decide what your life looks like and you get to make your own money, and I just think that's so important. Yeah. And I know, I say that cautiously because I do think you should be able to depend on your partner, you know, to share the load and stuff like that. But I also think that you shouldn't depend on that too heavily, you know?
Yeah.
I think
to having them to support. So I would see it as continuing the photography, and then when that has bookings, Jake is the carer. Just like I'm the carer when he goes to work, he's the carer when I go to work, which is photography. And having that support, it doesn't necessarily, like, the financial to me is a no-brainer that his income while I'm not working is the income. But to have the support where he's doing childcare just like I'm doing for him, so that we can both bring home the bacon. But it does empower women that you're not just stuck at home, and it gives you a bit of freedom outside of, because I don't think I will love being at home with, I'm just making an assumption, but I just don't think I'm going to love that.
You might get a whole bunch of balls of yarn and never leave. Just keep knocking them out.
Get those kids' clothes. I'm going to have to buy clothing for it.
But, and you know what? I've never met, in my experience with women, I've never met anyone yet who was overly comfortable, and, you know, maybe this says more about the women that I'm around than anything, but I've never met anyone who's overly comfortable depending 100% on their partner for, like, the money that they can spend or that the household can spend or whatever. I think that's a bit of a thing left over from that whole man of the house thing, that in our generation it's very much like, I don't want him to be able to tell me that I can't spend, you know, $5 on a coffee if I want to,
100%.
You know?
Yeah.
And I get that there's gives and takes, household budgets, blah, blah, blah. But, I just think there's so much freedom that can be offered to women.
And I think having that... Bless you.
That was loud. I think if it had a level higher than red, it would have peaked out at, like, 57 billion. Oh...
I think having that conversation too, like I've spoken about before, that I've read Barefoot Investor, which I'm in love with.
Yeah.
And
we heard.
But he in that talks about, you know, what your splurge money is and how you have a no questions asked amount.
Yeah.
So he stipulates him and his wife, it's $300 because that incorporates also haircuts for women, which are always super expensive. And you cannot question, you cannot argue or be upset if your partner spends within that amount. But it's when it's over that, you have a conversation. Is this really needed? Is this whatever? So I think that in terms of your side hustle and then how much of that might be your spending money versus contributing to the household is a good conversation to have.
I mean, I know for us that the only fights we've ever really gotten into about money is when I feel like Kelvin has made decisions that are too big for him to make on his own, considering that this is, it's a 2-person household. Like, if he was single, he could spend his money however the F he wanted. In our house, it's always been, anytime you hit that sort of 500 range, you really need to be having a conversation. And even then, 500 is a pretty decent chunk out of a budget for a household.
100%. It's a lot,
It's like, I would probably want to hear about it before that, but that's kind of what we'd drawn the line in the sand at. I think that's a good idea. Whether you're earning all sorts of money yourself or whatever, I think if you've made a commitment to someone and you're living a life together, then I think you should probably, be having that conversation that is, oh, so, dude, I finally saved an extra $1,000 and I'm going to buy a new lens, okay? Just, it's my money and I will spend it however I like, and he's the same. But I do think it's important because, if he had said to me that day, oh, actually, the rates come out next month, have we, done anything about that? I think it's important to be able to have those conversations. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, actually, for people considering side hustling with someone, because that's often I find how a lot of them start is, friends doing things together. And I'm definitely look at doing something with a friend that's more like a project based than a full on business. And we have to have those discussions because we are both inputting money to get it started. And then we're splitting the profit at the end of it. But we are going to have those conversations around what is our budget with what we're investing and how we're going to break that up and how we're going to talk to each other about making those spending decisions. Hopefully come out of the other side with our friendship still intact, because there's also that risk when you do something with a friend.
I think go to a solicitor, as crazy as it sounds, but Kelvin and I actually had to put together a business partnership agreement just for our tax purposes and obviously legacy purposes. So if something was to happen to one or the other of us, there's an agreement in place that determines what happens with the business and things like that, because it's owned as a partnership and it's very different, because I would have always assumed if something happened to Kelvin that it would just become my problem. But that's not always the case. So I think if you're getting into that, because it didn't cost us much, I really think it was less than sort of $500 to have that conversation, have something very simple drawn up. So it just then determines, okay, well, Samara and friend are in this relationship, how much have they contributed each? What happens if something happens to one or the other of you? What happens if it needs to be dissolved? How do you determine income splits? And it just makes it a little less emotive, and it's all just done.
Yeah, hot tip. That's a good one.
Yeah, it really is. And even though my business is with my husband, we found that invaluable to do.
I think it's good with friends as well. There's always that risk of one person, or it just kind of goes pear shaped. And I've definitely heard of that happening. And then how you might
situation changes. I think even just considering it before you go into business is really important. But to have it down as this is what we decided. Let's refer to that agreement. Because as partners, you can always choose to not do what the agreement says.
Sure,
Have yourself a meeting again. And at this meeting, Samara and I have decided that because I'm sick, she's going to operate for 3 months without me, and we'll review again at that time, or whatever. And it's like anything in business. You really do have to plan for it going to shit and everything going to shit to really cover your butt. And I just say that as someone who's, not covered my butt that well in the past.
And I think one of the biggest things we've had to think about looking at this is what are we willing to lose in terms of financially what we put in. So setting ourselves a budget that is, it's kind of like gambling, that we are comfortable losing this amount if it doesn't work out. And that's set the amount of what we're investing into it to start with. And then even though we've had that conversation together, she has a partner, I have a partner, we've then had to go talk to our partners about it. So there's all these layers of making sure everyone's on board, everyone's comfortable with the risk. And then, hope to God it pays off. But if in case it doesn't, not being too upset about it, being disappointed, but not then, having Jake be like, I can't believe you put X amount of dollars into it and it didn't work.
I was going to say, it can cause all sorts of problems, not just in your friendship, but like you said, in the relationships that you're having outside of that. Because, I think you definitely, especially when you're doing business with family and friends, it's important to have some really clear ideas of what everyone expects out of it as well. I think you're right on the money with that. You need to set out those expectations and be like, okay, this is what I expect and this is what you expect. And because even workload is, I hear it all the time when people go into business together and they have different work ethics or different work schedules or whatever. And then, you know, one person may work best between 1 and 3, but it's gonna, like in the morning. And the other person is a 9-to-5er for life sort of thing. So they get super frustrated because they feel like nothing's happening while they're there. And, there's a lot to consider.
It's a minefield, Yeah,
it's very different to selling a few ebooks on a blog or, you know, or, you know, even your thin fibers. It's very different to that, 100%. Yeah. So interesting. We have talked for so long again. I think we probably should, for those playing at home, I think you should give up the idea of us ever having a 30-minute episode again. Because we've settled in now, we're ready.
I feel like we pick these topics and then as we start to dive into them, we realise there's actually so much to unpack. And we could have probably broken this one up into 3 different conversations.
100%. I could easily talk about like business planning in the like that sense for hours, just based on like the mistakes I've made and all that sort of stuff. You know, most of our tax problems that we had a couple of years back all stemmed from the fact that there was no partnership agreement in place. And so a flat 50% of everything that business made came to my income.
Wow.
And I was already hustling all on my own, and I already had a job, and it was a contracted job, and so all of a sudden, instead of having 2 moderately even incomes, mine went over here and his went down here, and it was just like,
wow.
So it's definitely worth investigating. And if anyone's interested in hearing more about that, I'm definitely going to be talking more about like how I've tanked these things on the blog, and I'll try and get it into this podcast if people are interested, all that sort of stuff, because I've learned a lot. I feel like I haven't made it far for the amount of face plants that I've had over the years, but maybe with that in mind, we'll wrap up this episode, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, that was fast.
Bye.
Just over. I was like thinking, we'll agree to that and lead on in a little, but no, catch ya.
Bye, we're done.
Bye-bye.
For today's show notes, you can visit our website, www.sugarink.com. You can also send us in any questions or topics you would like us to cover at hello@sugarink.com. You can connect with us on social media using @sugarcoated and @blondinkaus.